Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lego, and here we go. Welcome everyone to the Strength Coach Experience, episode number 19. Hope everyone's enjoying their Christmas Eve here. Today I want to welcome Chris Janke, personal trainer, author, and also co-host of the podcast, Health in the Real World. I had the pleasure of being on Chris's podcast a few weeks ago, and now he has agreed to come on mine. So Chris, thanks for having on, man. I'm so happy to have you on here and you'll be able to talk a little bit.
Yeah, Joe, this is great. Thank you so much, man.
Of course. You're in a nice little layover there in LA, right? Going to Miami.
Yep, at the airport. Yep.
Well, hopefully,
hopefully I don't get busted for not masking up. But I think...
exactly. Yeah, if you need to cover your mouth or wear it on around your chin, it's
just pretend I'm drinking water.
Anybody watching the YouTube video, just
yeah, right.
Safe. So why don't we get right into things? Why don't you just go over your background, growing up, and then we'll kind of continue on how you ended up in the fitness industry.
Yeah. And I, as far as my background, I can even sort of parlay that in because I think it started young. I'm 40 years old. I've been a trainer for 16 years, but I think it started when I was like 5. I played soccer, baseball, basketball, and just loved sports and loved it's funny, I actually love the practice aspect of sports. I love the camaraderie of being a part of a team and working together and stuff like that. So that started young. I was always in a sport, fall, spring, it was just one after another, and it was all my own choice, right? I a lot of parents now, they'll like overbook their kids and stuff and think they're the next Michael Jordan or something. My parents just said, you guys, you do what you want. And I just wanted to play sports. I just wanted to play all day. So, you want how much detail as far as the childhood?
Well, no, I'll go through, like I'll touch, and then I thought you paused it because of the announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's like I said, I think that's a kind of common theme on the show. Everybody that I bring on that is coaching or personal training or somewhat still involved, at an older age in the industry. I think sports plays a big role. We all didn't work out at 5 years old, but I think playing sports and playing every sport was a big deal. Much like yourself, I did play every sport growing up, not necessarily organized, but I was always very active. And the practice part also I did enjoy. The competition was great, but I feel like there was a balance. You enjoyed getting better because you knew that your kind of all the work you did or whatever you worked on in practice would kind of come to fruition on the field or on the court. So I feel like everybody kind of, who gets into the industry further after sports, either continuously playing sports or, going on to the coaching side, it's something that they do where they also enjoy the sport. And they understand that kind of preparation is well seen on the field, or that's what they're doing it for. There's a greater purpose. So, it's not really struggling to get them to practice.
Right. Absolutely. It's interesting that when I finally realized in my kind of early 20s that I really should be a trainer and I have kind of this aptitude, was when I realized that not everybody enjoys moving. And that's just something it's always been in me. And I think it's regardless of what it is that International Airport is proud to welcome and support our active duty military. I think I should just keep talking, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So regardless of like what your thing is, right? If somebody watching this is not a trainer, but maybe they're a banker or something like that, I think it's really important that whatever you do kind of comes easily and you're good at it too, right?
Yeah, of course. I think it's one of those things whatever it is. That's why, I feel like with fitness, with sports, it doesn't end there, and I feel like a lot of podcasts, before starting the show and yours too, we touched on a lot of that stuff. It's people think that, just because it's a fitness podcast, that's all they talk about, and that is one of the motivations for starting the Strength Coach Experience, is because everyone I listen to is very dry. I grew up playing sports. I love sports. I'm a coach now. I coach sports. In the off season of my sport, I coach more sports, and I'm like, there's got to be more to this. And this is not why I do this. Like, I didn't become a strength coach, honestly, for baseball because I loved baseball. I didn't like baseball. I thought it was boring. But when it came time to choose a sport, I'm a basketball player. We talked about much like yourself. I didn't want to do basketball because for 10 years I played basketball. I traveled, I did all that stuff. So I wanted to do something different. And then when I broke down the sports, I liked how kind of baseball, how the athletes moved, how you have the dynamics of the two teams. And it was something that I could get behind and understand the movements and kind of figuring out the sport were what was fun for me, right? Football has always been a disaster for me. It's like cars crashing into each other. I was in Texas. I did an internship at TCU and just watching the lifts and stuff. Not that anything was bad or anything, but I was like, this isn't for me. It's like being at a rock concert, with weights. So I knew right away, but I feel like that is one of the things, that sports, fitness, and coaching, like you can kind of relate that to everything. If you're a banker, a doctor, it doesn't matter, because everything you do in life, it involves preparation to be successful at whatever you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and years and maybe even decades of that prep work. A friend of mine, actually, this is another good example of that, about how like the calling kind of started early. He was he was always into fantasy sports, and he would analyze batting averages and stuff, and RBIs and ERAs and stuff, baseball cards. And then he would play fantasy baseball with grown men. And this is before the internet, so you can't just go online and like trade players. He had to call these like 40-year-old men and try to convince them that they should trade fantasy players with him. So he's got the numbers thing going on, the batting average analysis. He's got all that. He's got the negotiation, calling up these men. He's probably 13 years old. He's calling these men, trying to convince them that they needed to trade Jose Canseco for Will Clark. And now he's a CEO of like a $6 million company. And those skills kind of transferred into what he's doing now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. That's what happens. You find that most people, I have friends that did a lot of trading and stuff like that. And I have a friend, prime example, we'd go to his house to play pool. We would lose money. You'd play like go fish. We would lose money. Now he's a professional poker player, because no matter what we did, somehow he would convince you to bet money. Be like, oh, the three of you are going to play me in pool. If I win, I get $10 from each. You're like, oh yeah, no problem. And then, you're standing there like, how did I end up losing money to you? We just came here to kind of eat pizza and play basketball, and that's how it was. But I think it's, if you follow kind of a lot of people from start, to now or where they are, you'll kind of see a lot of those traits, and I think that's why psychology and the mental aspect of coaching and fitness is very important, and you touched on it before, parents kind of trying to slam their kid's schedule full of a bunch of things that they think they're going to be good at is not good, because the sport will choose you, if you will, right? But the best thing to do is to play all of them. And eventually you'll say, well, I'm not that great at football. I don't really like lacrosse. Basketball is not for me. If you're in, and it will kind of, it will find you, if you will. So I don't also believe in, well, we're going to play one sport because I want them to play this thing, because you don't know yet. You don't know till you're 17. And you see stories all the time. I always bring up Bruce Bowen from the Spurs, one of the best defenders through the 90s, growing up and things like that. He didn't start playing basketball till the 11th grade, and now he's in the NBA. So there is examples like that. Some of these guys, everybody likes to think that they woke up at 5 and started dribbling a basketball. But in reality, some of them are, Dylan Betances, right? Walking around the school and high school, didn't really do too much. I think somebody saw him throw a football like 50 yards, just messing around. And, now he's in the big leagues, so there's a lot of examples like that. And not just in sports, I feel like that's everywhere. You have guys that just keep to themselves and save money. And then all of a sudden they run companies, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think there's definitely something to be said about the desire coming from within you, as opposed to somebody putting it on you, right? So, and I just think about, like, again, myself. My parents weren't saying anything to me. I would go out and dribble a basketball in the driveway at 11 o'clock at night. I know I've heard stories of Michael Jordan just wanting to play all day long. And I think that's what it takes. You know, ultimately we need to have that from within. I think it was Rocky 4 when he fights the Russian guy. You've seen all the Rockies?
Yep, Ivan Drago.
That
Oh,
was
of
part
course.
4, right?
I've seen all the good ones, and then all the ones where he's atrocious in a wheelchair fighting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Rocky 4, they had that training montage where he's
Yes.
in the snow and he's doing all the stuff that's like functional stuff, and they're like sort of piecemealing workouts together. And then the Russian guy, he's in a laboratory. He's got like 20 scientists around him. They're injecting him with all this stuff. He's got all the cutting edge, state of the art stuff. And I think what was great about that montage and what it says is Rocky had the intrinsic desire to do it. It didn't matter what was in his external world, snow, crappy equipment, whatever. And then this other guy was more built. He had more scientists. He had better equipment, but he didn't have the heart. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Whatever you choose to do, you have to have the heart. It has to come from within, and nobody's going to put that on you, right? It has to completely come from within, and you just have to jump into it. It's like when you don't know what it is, but you have a desire to do it. It's like you're jumping into an abyss, and you're just like, I can't see anything. I'm just going to do it. And I think that's what it takes to become successful at anything.
Of course, yeah, and I mean that scene I used to listen to before I went to the gym, you know, and you can take Ivan Drago and look him as the kid that was kind of pushed, you know, into something that he didn't really want to do, and then you see the results. So I think, yeah, you know, you're going into things, you know, same thing with you. I was shooting baskets in the snow and stuff like that when I was growing up, you know, but I didn't know why. I just knew I wanted to get better. Just going back, I just want to touch on something you said, you know, I was talking about playing basketball 11 o'clock at night as you went through high school, right? Because we talked about, you know, playing basketball, and did your kind of, not obsession, if you will, maybe there's a better word, but did that grow kind of as you're in high school? Like you said, you started early on, kind of always enjoying the practice. Was that something that kind of just kind of grew as you went through high school, that kind of passion and kind of zeroing in on what you wanted to do?
What's crazy is that there was a gap of about 4 years. I think I burned myself out halfway through high school. I actually didn't even play varsity for my high school. I played JV my sophomore year, and then I didn't even try out junior year. I was done. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I went through those 2 years, high school, first 2 years of college, didn't play much. Started to sophomore year. Junior year, I decided to try out for the college team. I went to Loyola Marymount here in LA. But where was I going with this? Sorry. A buddy of mine and I, we're just playing pickup games, right? And we just decided, like, let's just try out for the team. Like, what worst they can say is no. And we tried out. We didn't make it, but the coach said, "Hey, you guys show heart. Like, you guys are diving after loose balls and stuff." And so we got to play on the practice squad. So basically, we got to practice with the guys, and then game time comes. We're not anybody. We're not even on the bench. We're in the stands. But I got a lot better. And by the end of the year, there was one guy who graduated the year I was a junior. So he's a year older than me. And he was short, you know, he was like 5'7", but very muscled, and he could jump really high. And he got a contract to play semi-pro ball in Germany. And he was definitely better than I was, but I felt like, you know, we were like this, like I was right there, you know, I could pick his pocket every now and then. I could score on him every now and then. And I thought, you know, if I really try this, I can make it too. And so, so that's when, again, just like Bruce Bowen you were talking about, I was 19, maybe 20 years old, 21 years old, maybe 21 years old. And that's when just my passion for basketball went just like off the charts. I hired a personal trainer. We worked together for a year and a half. I probably increased my vertical jump by almost a foot, and I was dunking a basketball with two hands. I was just running laps around everybody because I had a trainer, and I was in at the YMCA for 5 hours a day working on my ball handling and passing skills. And that was it. It was right after college, and then I tried out for two semi-pro teams. Didn't make either one, and I realized there's just too much competition. There was a guy who was my height. I'm 6'1". He was my height, and he was showing us in between games how he could touch his head on the rim. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And that guy didn't make a team. So, and there was actually one of the tryouts, one of the coaches came out and he said, all right, guys, if you're under 6'4", go home. So, but doing that, and this is what I tell people, I say, no matter what your goal is, jump in full force, because I jumped into that goal full force, not knowing if I was going to do it or not knowing if I would succeed or not. And I didn't succeed, but I did in a way, because that directly led me to my career as a trainer of 16 years. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be a trainer right now.
Yeah, those hardships, like I said, and I don't, even though you didn't, play semi-professional, it's still, you set a goal, to get better, and you did it the best you could, and you, kind of win until you couldn't play anymore. Same thing for me, kind of with basketball. I didn't play any high level. I was in junior college, but I made it. I came off the bench, I scored some points, but my grade parent average wasn't the best, and we had to make a decision whether we wanted to fail school and play basketball, or kind of concentrate on something else. But I think it's a great thing. Anything you want, you have to dive fully in, and I think you have to be willing to fail. You knew 100%. Was I going to make it? I don't know. But also, I think it's important to put yourself in those situations, because if you didn't try out for the practice squad, right? If you didn't make it to that area, you would have never met the person that was almost the same size as you and say, hey, I can do this. I feel like that is the biggest thing. I think a lot of people either shield themselves from competition, or they just convince themselves that competition is the competition in the next level, whether it is, they can't do. And I feel like it's very important, just from your story, to be able to put yourself in the position of the competition. I didn't play too much in high school either. I kind of messed around, but then when I went to college, I wasn't the best, but I could shoot with the rest of the team. I could handle myself. When I got there, it was like, okay, I can do this a little bit. I didn't play too much. There was guys that jump higher than me, and all that stuff, but it was just throwing myself into that and saying, okay, I can still, we're on the same level. These people might be a little bit better, whatever, but I think that's great. I think that goes for anything. You have to find out what you want to do, but also you have to allow yourself to go in and try the things that you might not be good at, regardless if it's a job. If you want to be in finance, if you want to be in certain things, you have to put yourself in situations where you might fail at whatever it is, but also you could succeed. Because you might convince yourself your entire life, I'm going to be bad at this. There's no way I'm going to be good at this. And then you go in there first day, whatever it may be, and there's people that are either not as good as you're better at certain things, or you might realize that this is something that you're, fantastic at. So I think that's a great life lesson for anybody listening. And I think it's important to take out, not only just in sports, but you have to, have passion, as you said, give everything you have, but also you have to be able to kind of have the heart to put yourself in situations where there's a giant chance you could fail. Even if you've convinced yourself you were already going to fail, but do it anyway. Because then if you do fail, or, you're done playing sports, or you go into finance and it doesn't work, at least you can't say, well, I should have. You never want to say, I should have done any of that.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to shoot on yourself. It's powerful, like going after the goal. And I think I tell this to my clients too, that if you're able to set a fitness goal or a health goal, again, even if you don't achieve it, I think that's like a foundational goal. And so learning how to set a health goal will help you learn how to set a relationship goal, a finance goal, a money goal, whatever other goals you have. And I think the reason is, one is because it's so personal to you. Very little people can take your health away from you, versus, if you start a business, you might have the best business in the world, but there might be someone who's just a little bit better. And so it's not a zero-sum game, but somebody can almost knock you down, versus everyone in the world could be in great shape, right? Could be healthy and fit. And so you have a little more control over that. So I think once you get better at setting that goal, then you can branch out and do other goals as well.
Exactly. No, I've always said that, once you find your gift or your goal, nobody can take that away from you. And if they can, it's not meant to be. For me, it's always articulation and talking. So I have a podcast. Nobody can take that away from me, right? People can be better trainers, more athletic, but I feel like that's a big point. Your passion and the thing that you're supposed to do is something that nobody can take from you. When you could be able to do it on an iceberg. If you're by yourself on an iceberg, you should be able to do that. So I just want to touch on, so after, you did the stuff with semi-pro, let's go into how you started training, and kind of how that kind of became a thing.
Yeah, the trainer who was working with me, his name was actually also Joe, like you, and he saw me working, and he saw me going to these two tryouts, and he saw just I think he pretty much knew that I was done. You know, I tried it, and I'm just like I'm really not even close. Like I wasn't even close to making a team. And he just said, he pulled me aside and he said, "Look, bud, uh, you tried. You just 99% of the people out there wouldn't do it. You tried, and you would be a really good trainer." And that just kind of sparked it. I was at the gym all the time anyway. And actually got a job at the gym working at the front desk. And I said, "Yeah, I'll get a job at the gym working as a trainer." So I bought all the materials. I studied for 9 months, took the test, and boom, there I was. And they gave me the job right away because they knew me. And at that point, it was learning the trade, right? Getting the clients, trying to figure out where I fit and what type of client I train. And it's interesting because over the years, I've sort of, even though I grew up as an athlete, I don't really train that many athletes. I did train a NFL football player last year, but it wasn't in like athleticism. It was rebalancing, which is, what I do with most people. It's helping people with back pain, getting them to rebalance their bodies, muscle balance. So yeah, it's been pretty cool, watching kind of the development over the 16 years as far as the type of training that I do. But um, honestly, I really try to live in the moment, and I try to just say, well, where am I now, and where do I want to go, and and just do it. So yeah. Yeah, so the main thing is just, living in the moment, and I think with me, with my career, it's been being willing to change directions if needed. And I'm just kind of listening uh at, the direction that I'm called to go. So there's so many different directions to go in the fitness industry, and it's kind of fun exploring a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think what you brought up before too, kind of finding the clients that work for you. You know, a lot of people that start off, or some trainers that have been in it for a while, think you just go train everybody. And I think if you really know yourself and know what you're good at, not necessarily what you're good at, but just the people you kind of want to be around and allow in your circle, that will identify the people that you train. I start off with athletes, and then I've met some, older adults who've been my best clients, and I love being around them. And I never thought in 1,000 years that I would train, people that were of an older age, but they're amazing. They offer so much advice on life. They're very aware of things. They get to know you better than sometimes you know yourself at certain times. And I think it's just kind of, like you said, be open to kind of the direction, and always be willing to kind of change. I always knew that I loved fitness because it went from playing to strength and conditioning to training to podcasting. But, like yourself, you stay kind of along the line. It's kind of like on the coast of fitness. It's always there. You're always involved in it in some way, but it's not necessarily this is the only thing I do. It either expands, but always be open to. I think that's a great point. Always be open to kind of where the fitness industry takes you, especially I think with COVID and everything going on. Everything's changed. Not a lot of in person stuff. So I think it gives you a lot of time to kind of reflect, but also expand your business a little bit and kind of figure out where you want to go next, or the areas in which you should improve on. I just so After you got involved at the gym, you started training people. Let's just go through the early years of training and kind of how you progressed to training more high level people, and kind of how you developed your business.
Yeah, early on, I actually knew pretty early on that I wanted to start my own business. I think I started as a trainer in 2004, started my own business in 2006. Went out, just signed a lease for a place. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue. I just signed a lease because that's what you do. You get a location, right?
Hmm.
And it was right by Santa Clara University, and it was the worst location ever. It was so so stupid. I don't know why I did this. I was right in between a nail salon and a cigarette shop
Nice.
in a strip mall. It was horrible. It's the worst location possible because people go and buy their cigarettes, and then immediately they need to smoke, right?
Mhm.
Because they need their hit of nicotine. It was just the worst location. But I did okay. I had my little niche, and it was okay. It was a tiny little 400 square foot place. And so, but I had my clients. I was doing okay, just me by myself. and then went through the full 2-year lease, and then that pulls us into 2008. And then the owner says, "Hey, Chris, you want to sign another 2 years?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing great. I'm going really well here." So I re-signed the lease, and then I don't know if you remember 2008 with the
Yep. The
crash and
bubble.
everything, right?
Yep.
The bubble, the real estate stuff. I lost 13 clients in a week.
Wow.
It was and that was a month after I had just re-signed my lease. So learned real quick with business, with some people in business. Business is business, because I went to the guy and I said, "Hey, I just re-signed this lease. Let me just get out of it. I'm done. This business is done." He wouldn't let me. So I had to make an offer. So I made an offer, had to get out of there. Just like, it was bad. I had one client. Remember Jerry Maguire, the movie? He has one client left, is Rod Tidwell, his Cuba Gooding Jr. And I had one client, and I went to his house for 3 years, and it was just me and him. And my wife started a home daycare, and I worked for her the rest of the day. I had my one client, and then I worked for her the rest of the day. Over those 3 years and hitting that kind of rock bottom, I think it was really good for me, because I almost every day I asked myself, is this what I really want to do? And even with one client, the answer was always yes. Even if it was no for an hour or two, it always turned into a yes. And but going through that, I learned so much about what not to do. And I also, again, developed the passion, realized that this is what I want to do. And the analogy I use now, I was just talking to a friend of mine today about this, actually. If somebody says, "Hey, do you want an apple or a banana?" And you, or no, sorry, they tell you what they're going to give you. They're like, "I have an apple and a banana. I'm going to give you the banana." Your response, and if we listen to our response, that's going to tell us how badly we wanted that apple, or if we actually want the banana. So that's kind of what it was. It was like something was taken from me, and it made, I could say, "Oh, it's a sign, I'm not meant to do this." But in reality, I felt deep in my heart that, no, I want to do this. And it brought me to that next level, which is what needed to happen for me to, at the end of those 2 or 3 years, for me to have the guts to do it again. And it's it's funny, I sort of had some flashbacks at the start of this year with COVID, because I was scared it was going to happen again. And so I immediately went online. I just raised the bar. I said, "Guys, this is, not only are we not going to stop training you, but we're going to make it even better." And I had to go there because I was so scared. And then I realized real quick, okay, this is different. I can't project 2008 onto today. But again, speaking of COVID again, the adaptability, right? We need to adapt, right? You're not just going to have a gym where you're going to cram a bunch of people in anymore. We need to adapt. So a lot of lessons learned. A lot of good stories.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. I'm sorry that happened to you in '08, but I think it comes from experience. You learn these things. And anybody out there listening that wants to start a gym, or wants to get involved in this, these things can happen. Clients are clients. And as close as they are, and I'm not saying for all. I have ones I've talked to for years, and they're life friends. But if something happens, you're kind of an add-on. It's very rare that they're like, "Okay, I'm going to sell my car so I can keep my trainer," and not that you should always be aware of that, but those are things that happen. That's one of the tricky things I think with the industry, because I'm sure Chris talked about it. I've had it too. You've had months or years where you're on fire. You got client after client, and you can't even move. You have so many people you're training, and then all of a sudden they go on vacation, some things happen, somebody gets hurt, and then all of a sudden we have our one client or our 3 clients. So I think it's very important to always remember that. I think it helps you with finance, being able to kind of balance out where you need to be and not kind of get overzealous. I've seen lots of trainers that they have a good month and they buy a BMW, and I'm like, "Listen, man, you might want to pump the brakes a little bit, but I think it's a great story in that it explains to you what can happen. Obviously '08 was a little bit of a freak occurrence, but relating it to right now, with COVID. But you were able to take that experience from '08, and although it's not the same, and although there was a little bit of kind of fear in there, you were able to use that experience and now, make it better for this time and kind of bulletproof your business from any of these things happening again. And not only did you make it kind of feasible, but you made it better. So now you're instead of saying, okay, well we're okay. No, I'm going to make it better, and I'm going to increase my business, if you will, during this time. And I think that's a very important lesson. It's not only am I going to survive, it's I'm going to survive, and I'm going to kind of raise the bar higher than it currently is, even though this thing's going on. So I think that's a great lesson, for anybody out there listening that wants to get involved in this industry or as a trainer is currently in there. I've talked to a lot of people about opening places up, and it's just the thing, you just have to be careful, because these things can happen. You have to be prepared for them. You don't want, and I think that the big thing you said with the apple and the banana, it's also, can the passion bring you through, right? If you have 30 clients and you're on cloud 9 and all of a sudden you lose all those clients, is this still what you want to do? I read a fantastic quote today. I had to put it up on the Instagram, and it said, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still do what you're currently doing? Right. And I think that opens so many doors, and it makes you think about so many things, right? Would you quit this in an instant, and kind of use that money to live the rest of your life? Or would you say, okay, that's great, I have this money, I don't have to worry about certain things, but I'm still going to continue being involved in the industry?
Yeah. And I think for me, it's a gray area, because, if you do win the lottery and you have tens of millions of dollars, there are a lot of things that need to be done in your business, that need to be done in my business, that I would just refuse to do. I'd be like, all right, cool. I'm not doing the books anymore. I'm not doing all the stuff that I don't like doing. And what that would do is open me up for doing what I love doing, hanging out with people and helping them get fit. And that is a great question, because I think that will tell you a lot. And then go the other way too, right? If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still do what you're doing? Or if you lost all your clients except one tomorrow, would you still do what you're doing? I think those are great questions that every trainer or potential trainer should ask. It's funny. I was so scared. To ask for what I needed, though, which is interesting. And it's interesting that COVID did this, because I've wanted to do the online business model for a long time, probably 5 years, maybe longer. And then in March this year, I had to, right? So it's interesting. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know people are getting sick and dying, but there's definitely a silver lining to this whole thing, right? It's like this forced a lot of things to happen that maybe would have happened a lot slower, or maybe never have happened ever. So it's pretty interesting, and I think overall, we can't waste time thinking like, what if, or like coulda, woulda, shoulda. And I think that's what happens when you don't go after something. Like, if I wouldn't have tried out for those basketball teams, coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I think trying stuff, and I think failing, and I think taking pandemics in stride is the key, because you coulda, woulda, shoulda yourself to death, and it's just not going to do anything. I think just taking that action right now is the key.
Of course, I completely agree. COVID is terrible what's going on, but you have realizations. Same thing. I was at a place, I was training in the city. I was running around like a psychopath all day from 4 a.m. till all over the place, and I realized that the place I was at, I didn't like. I was miserable. I loved I was working at a place, and then I had my clients on the side. Now I do miss my private clients. I did enjoy every moment I got to be with them and train them. But, the place I was, from 5 a.m. till 12, I was like, I'm so much happier without having to go to this other place, and the podcast grew out of the pandemic. I did a few, and, now here we are. And I could admit right now, I would have never started this if it wasn't for the pandemic. I mean, I would have kept on going
Yep.
with the training at the gym I was at and trying to build my business, but the podcast wouldn't have been a thing. It wouldn't have been, whether it was enough energy or just the want to do it, so I feel like that's a great thing. It is terrible, but also there's a silver lining, because now you can you use it as a time to say, what do I really want to do? We keep touching on this point, but also what are the things that I have to do, or the things I've been neglecting? Because now I have this time I have to do these things to kind of build my business. I have to learn how to be online. I have to learn how to coach people online, because I'm sure before you did it, I mean, I had not issues, but when I first started, you can't point to things. You can't, touch anybody's leg and tell them where to lunge or where to put their foot. You're now explaining to somebody who's on a computer where to, how to lunge correctly, how to do this, how to breathe. And it becomes a whole another challenge. So you learn to do things, put them in front of walls and things like that. But that's a whole different thing than being in front of them. It's a lot easier to correct people in 10 seconds. But when you have an hour and now we have to spend 5-10 minutes setting people up to do reverse lunges and things of that sort, and kind of coach them through, it's a big deal. So I think it's a very big thing you bring up that, although it is a terrible thing, I think it's something that everybody, not just in this industry, but mainly, we're talking about fitness, they have to be prepared for. Be prepared to have your entire business online. And also for you as a trainer and as a coach, be prepared to be able to coach everybody online. And you should be able to offer the same exact product, if you will, or service from you sitting on a computer screen as if I was right there. Obviously that energy is second to none, being in person. But I also think there is a way to come close to that or deliver that same energy through the internet, through the phone.
Yep, I think so. I agree 100%. Yeah.
So why don't we go through, just developing your business, kind of what your kind of style was, and then just the author stuff, and then we'll go into the podcast a little bit.
Style of training. I think that's a great question, because there's a lot of different styles of personal trainer. I'm a lot like I am right now. I'm very chill. I'm very relaxed. People's lives, it's so funny because our culture is so sedentary, but our brains are just like always on, right? And so I feel like people are so stressed, and I want to flip it, right? I want to get their bodies up and their minds down. So workouts with me are very casual and very chill. And if I see, and I'm always looking for how you're responding to it. So if I'm seeing that you're getting tired, like legitimately tired, not just like, "Ooh, this is hard," right? But like you're like,
Yeah.
I'll just say, "Hey, go get some water. Let's talk." And then take 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then figure out what's happening, and then see if we want to continue. So I'm, I go in with a game plan, but I'm very flexible, extremely flexible, as far as what exercises we're doing. If something's hurting you, I'm going to modify it. I'll do fewer reps with you, or we can do more reps if it's easy. So it's always a moving target. What I do though is I keep your main goal, I keep the main vision in sight, and then there's 1,001 different ways to get to that goal. So I'm flexible as far as my approach with that.
Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I believe the same thing. And, same thing, touching on people that want to start out. You have a wonderful plan, but most of the time when you get involved with anybody in general, you can have all the things that you want to do, but most of the time you have to do what they want to do, and so, like you said, you put their goal up there, and I think you use the goal to kind of convince them sometimes to do things that they don't want to do. But you're right. If they have a long day, in the office and they're shot, you could have this wonderful thing written down, but they're not going to do that, and I think a lot of it is also too, you get clients based on people that like to spend time with you. You're a good person, you're knowledgeable, you have intellect and things like that. They can talk to you, but also you kind of have to slide exercise in there with some people, if you will, but I think it's great what you said. There's 1,001 ways to get to your goal, but I think you have to be open to all of them. It's not, this is what I wrote down today, this is what I'm doing, and this is what we're going to do, because there's going to be different things, and you don't want to say, well, if you don't want to do this, we can't get there. I feel like flexibility, especially when you're training high level people, we talked about it before, where, their brains are constantly going on. It's business, business, business all the time. I'm sure you had it too. They'll walk into the gym, they'll be on the phone. You can see they're already fired up, and you're like, okay, today we're not going to get too much going, so let's try to do some things to kind of calm their brain down, because you can see it, as you said, you can see it when they walk in. You're like, today's not going to be a day where we're all about working out. It's kind of like they bought themselves here because of me, and we kind of got to find hammer some stuff out. So I think that's a very good thing that you brought up. When you do that, it's kind of, the goal is the goal, right? As always, we should always have a goal, but don't limit yourself to how you can get there, and always be open, or unless you're going to lose clients. You can't have one path. There has to be 1,000.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's go into the just how we started the podcast, and then a little bit into the authoring stuff.
Yeah. The podcast, very similar to you, actually. I don't know if I would have done the podcast if not for COVID. It was, I started it in August, and it just seemed like a very logical way to connect with other health professionals. And I call it the triple win. So, if I'm interviewing you, you and I both get more exposure for our businesses and just our ideas. And then the ultimate win is, that we're providing enough value for the people who are listening. So everybody wins. And I just thought that was such a good way to meet other professionals. It's a lot easier than, networking events or something. And you're saying like, oh, hey, nice to, and there's like, it was something that I could give to people immediately. Like, I'm going to give you exposure to, right now it's not a whole, couple dozen, right? I'm getting like 50 to 100 views on my videos within a week or two. And it just seemed like a win-win. So the podcast, Health in the Real World, and just like you again, I love health, I love fitness, but it gets boring if that's all you talk about. So I don't know if you remember my last question to you is like, what if you're a motivational speaker and you're giving your motivational talk at a college graduation, what do you say? And I've gotten the best answers. And that's so much so that I created that montage video that I put you in. And there were 18 of my guests that I was able to splice like little 8 to 15 second little golden nuggets. And it was just like the coolest video. So it's been really, really fun and inspiring, doing all that. As far as I'm the kind of guy, I just have so many ideas. Like, I'll go from one idea to the next to the next. So I needed sort of a container to put all the ideas in. So if I get an idea, instead of having to start a new project, I can just put that idea in a podcast episode. So that was pretty cool. In addition, so you mentioned the books and all the products and stuff. So this has been transformative for me. So I have one of my clients who's also a business executive coach, I think is her title, executive coach. And I've had some sessions with her, and she does neuro-linguistic programming and just a lot of other really cool modalities. Basically, she helps people go from like really good, really successful to like off the charts. And I'm just super fortunate to be able to hang out with her as a client and pick her brain and stuff. And so about a year and a half ago, both of us had already put out one book. We had like our I don't know, foundational product. I have a book called Help I Threw Out My Back. It's 4 workouts, no equipment needed, to help people kind of relax their back and strengthen their core. And I had made that book, but then I sort of stopped and I hit a sort of a dead end. So she and I created what we call Product Club. And it's kind of a little bet we have going. And we raised the stakes. Like your poker buddy friend would love this. He would he would get in on this. We basically, instead of just having something to shoot toward, our goal was to create one product per month that we could sell online, that we didn't have to personally sell, but we could put it on Amazon or something. So one product a month that shared our knowledge with the world. So that was the goal. But the penalty, if you don't publish your product by midnight, the last night of the month, you have to give $100 to a politician on the other side of the aisle. So and neither one of us has donated any money, because it's just so painful of a thought that and so I've made, and there's no rules as far as what you can make. So like this month I'm going to create a chore book for kids. I have 4 kids, and my oldest 2, my 8 and my 6-year-old, are really getting interested in like being able to buy stuff on their own. And I said, well, you guys can buy whatever you want. I don't care. I'm not going to go buy you every toy that you want, but if you want to save up your money, go for it. That's awesome. And so we created like a little accountability system in the chore book, and they sign their time card sort of thing. Like, hey, I mopped the floor, so I get $1. And it's it's working out pretty well. So I turned it into a little book, and I'll be posting that on Amazon. Most of my books, though, are can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of my books are fitness related books. So like probably my favorite fitness book that I've made is called Naked Fitness, and it's basically how to get a great workout with zero equipment whatsoever. And there's like 68 exercises that you don't need anything for. And that was really fun. It's a tiny little pamphlet. It's, you know, like 80 pages, 90 pages. And so yeah, you know, all my books are up on Amazon, and I self-publish them, and it's just so fun. It's just so cool being able to put out a product and have it stand on its own, and refer people to it based on what they need, right? Like I have a nutrition book, I have a back pain book, I have a motivation book, I have the body weight fitness book. So it's really cool. And that product club bet that we have going is really the fire underneath that, the reason why I started creating those.
Yeah, I think it's amazing though. You know, you're able to meet somebody and who's a client, you know, who does certain things. But I feel like the same thing. I learned so much from my clients, you know, being around them, and I think it's a blessing. You know, we talked about silver linings, the people that I was able to train. You know, because you don't think, oh, I'm going to train all these people and I'm going to be the best trainer in the world. And then what happens is you meet these people and you realize what they do, and then they end up changing you and kind of changing how you think. And there's literally so much to learn. You know, once you get to know certain people, and I'm sure it's the same with this client you talk of, you just sit there and listen to them. You know, you give them exercises, but you're like, wow, this is, you know, you get these people, you're like, well, every time I work out with them, I just sit there and I listen to them kind of explain things to me, because they know so much more in a field that I'm trying to kind of break into. And bring up the podcast, you know, I think it's great that what you're doing, you know, the message, and also, you know, you don't really realize, you know, and I thought about this a couple weeks ago, how many people you talk to on a daily basis when you were training before COVID, you know, and thinking back, like I'm like, well, I haven't really not talked to somebody who wasn't family since I was whatever, since I was at high school. You know, every job I've had, there's always been people, there's always been friends, you know, starting training, there's always been athletes and coaches. So there's always somebody, you know, kind of in that same fitness realm that I could bounce some ideas off, or just somebody else to talk to. And then COVID hits and you don't have that anymore, right? So you're talking on the phone, you're trying to get a hold of people, but it's very hard, you know, because you're not able to have that kind of balance. I think it's that energy balance that we all as human beings try to search for. And so that's one of the reasons with the podcast, you know, being able to bounce ideas off and be able to talk to people. But and that's one of the good things with the podcast is you get to talk to so many people, and it's kind of making up for that time that you don't have anymore. You know, so I think it's a good thing you brought up with that though. But like I said, for me too, the clients are really what changes you. And I think it's awesome with the products on Amazon and you know, the little bet, because it doesn't take a lot. You know, I'm one of the things you realize, I'm sure, as you realize when you start to get products, the first product was probably like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And by now
Yep.
you're like, oh, this is a good idea. You know, let's go put it on Amazon. You know, that kind of fear goes away as you kind of progress.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it was the Naked Fitness book, the body weight exercise book. I think I made that in 5 hours. I already had the pictures, so that kind of put me a leg up. So I had like hundreds of pictures that I had produced previously, taken the pictures previously, and I just formatted it in Canva. I don't know if you ever used Canva.com.
No, I've
It's
heard
like
about it though. People have told me to use it before for
great,
illustrating things.
great resource. I made that book in Canva, and I just you just format it. You put the picture there, you put the text, and then export it as a PDF, upload it to Amazon. It's super cool.
Well, that's great. Yeah, definitely going to look into that, because you're not the first person to tell me to use Canva, especially for posting and just certain things. And like yourself, I feel like I want to get a book out there, get some information out there. And now it's, you know, so easy. You just have the information, you put it out there, and then boom, you can stick it on Amazon. So that's great. And
Yep.
anybody listening, like I said, you can do whatever you want to do. You know, I always say that, you know, whatever it is, especially in today's age, if you make tees for golf, you know, you can sell them. You know, there's no limit to stuff. I mean, I read an article the other day. I was talking to my sister about it. There's two guys in Canada that sold air from Canada, and how they started. They sold Ziploc bags that said Canadian Air on eBay for like $2 a piece, and now they have branding and they sell for like 19 Canadian dollars. And I'm like, that's it. You can. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I love it. That's so great.
Yes. Yep. So marketing, if you have marketing, you can kind of do whatever you want. But yeah, Canadian Air. I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. So Chris, for anybody out there who wants to get started, I mean, I know we talked a lot about your journey and different things. For anybody out there that wants to break into strength and conditioning, to fitness, what is your advice? What would be kind of your spiel? If I come up to you, 17, 18 years old and say, I want to get involved in the fitness industry, what do you think I should do?
I think you should research all the different types of training and then just pick one and get all the certifications and everything necessary, and maybe even find a trainer that does that as well, and kind of see if you can get a mentorship or something like that under them. And I would just do it. And it might not be where you end up in 10 years, but just get your foot in, just jump in. And it's going to look different for different people, but I would say just do it. I mean, if you're halfway interested and you feel like it would be a good career field for you, I'd say just do it. If you're older, I know you mentioned they were younger, but if you are older and maybe you have a spouse and kids and you have a mortgage and this and that, jump in part-time, right? Keep your day job and jump in and see how you like it, and see how many clients you can get and how much money you can expect to make and things like that. But I'm a huge fan of just learning by doing, right? I never would have known about those tryouts, except I just did it. I just jumped in. I said, let's just do it and see where it goes. And it paid off just by doing it.
Phenomenal piece of advice there. Yep, 100%. If you're thinking about doing something, don't break the bank, if you're an older person that has responsibilities. But I think, the best way to learn if you want to do it or not is to go do it, get that certification, get to a point where you can, practice safely and do it, and for anybody younger, this goes for anybody older, right? Do your research, make sure that you know what you're doing, make sure you're comfortable doing what you're doing, and get out there, and I think, like Chris said, pick something that you like and take some time, master that, make sure you're good at it, and then go for it, but I also don't believe in, preparing for 2 years before you have your first client, because I mean, I know lots of people, they're amazing at books and things like that, and they can't coach anybody to, walk in a straight line, not being negative on anybody, but I feel like that's a big deal, just get in there and do it. I think it's with most things. Now, if you're going to be a doctor, surgeon, you can't just dive in there and start playing around with that stuff. But I feel like in the industry, 100%, just, fill out the resume, apply, or I think it's great to talk to somebody, and just like me and Chris, we just, I was on his podcast, he's on mine now, we have a friendship, and, there's plenty of resources in which you can go and to ask people, on my Instagram, on his, I mean, I do it every day with Instagram, send a DM. Hey, I'm a new trainer. This is my background a little bit.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe and follow us on Instagram for all the latest updates on the podcast.
Along stuff that you like. I would suggest too, I do this a lot. Chris, I'm sure you do. I human guinea pig a lot. I'll go do their program for maybe a week or so and see how I feel personally. And if I can do the movements, if I can figure them out and it's not a big thing. And then once that's a thing, that's, something that's there, then I'll go test it on the client. So just to make sure it's safe.
That's awesome. It's a great idea. Yeah.
Of course.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Always got to do that. Sometimes I will say though, it didn't work out. See, that's why I don't do CrossFit. I will admit, I did snatches and all that stuff for about a week, and then my back said, we're not gonna do this, and that was the end of that. But I did try. I do try to try everything that's out there just to make sure, because you never know. Something might look ridiculous, and then you try it, and you're like, wow, my back's been a little iffy doing squats this way. I tried this random thing I found, and now it feels better. So you never know. But it's very important, just to touch on. Make sure you have a foundation. Make sure you understand where you're comfortable too. Don't get a bunch of clients and go on Instagram and pick out exercises and start having people do a bunch of crazy stuff. But I feel like, foundation, very important, and ask questions. I think that's the biggest thing to take away from this. Ask questions and go in at full force, and that's it. You can, with everything going on, you can find tons of information. With COVID going on, people are a little more susceptible to answer questions. They're not as busy. There's a lot more on computers, so you can figure that out. And, just figure out something that you like too, and I also believe that too. make sure you like it. Don't do it if you don't like it. And if you don't believe in something or you don't think a certain exercise works, don't do it. You don't have to do anything. And there's kind of no parameters. I feel like we've talked about that too in the fitness industry, and why I love it so much. There is no fences. You can have a podcast, you can sell t-shirts, you can be a trainer, you can be a professional athlete. I mean, there's so much you could do. I mean, the last one, professional athlete, genetics involved in that, but you know what I mean? You can, there's so many different directions in which you can go. And that's why I love the industry personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's fun to just kind of explore around a little bit.
Exactly. Yep. There is so many different kind of places to go or things to do in the industry that I think, if you're involved in it, if it's something you like, I don't think there's anything. I think you can find your niche somehow.
Yeah. Joe, I just got a notification. I'm at 10% battery, so I gotta.
Okay, well,
everything's dying on me.
On that note, and the fact that you cannot smoke in airports at LAX,
right.
That lady was going off about it for about 5 minutes. If anybody wants to reach you, Chris, what is the best way to do that? I will put your information on my Instagram post, but just put it on there so anybody listening can kind of get a hold of you.
Yeah, probably my website, mycorebalance.com. mycorebalance.com. And then on my Core Balance YouTube channel, that's where I put all the podcasts and everything. So yeah, just My Core Balance, search it and it'll pop up.
Okay, awesome. And for anybody, like I said, that wants to get a hold of Chris, I will put that stuff in the podcast. And like I said, always there to answer some questions or help you out with whatever you need. Chris, thanks, man. I truly appreciate you being on, man. It was a lot of fun. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, this was great, Joe. You made you took up like half my layover, so I'm only 2 hours from getting on this flight, so we're good. Thanks so much, appreciate it.
Of course, glad I could help speed up that layover.
There you go.
For watching, please remember to subscribe and follow us on Instagram for all the latest updates on the podcast.